these practices are going to become less visibly abusive. We are living through the Wild West days today.
The race to become an AI superpower is on.
The politics of artificial intelligence.
There will be a Chinese tech sector, and there will be an American tech sector.
The new tech war.
The more data, the better the AI works. So in the age of AI, where data is the new oil, China is the new Saudi Arabia.
The future of work. When I increase productivity through automation, jobs go away.
I believe about 50% of jobs will be somewhat or extremely threatened by AI in the next 15 years or so.
AI and corporate surveillance.
We thought that we were searching Google. We had no idea that Google was searching us.
And the threat to democracy.
China is on its way to building a total surveillance state.
It has pervaded so many elements of everyday life. How do we make it transparent and accountable?
In the age of AI.
We have, in my opinion, a very short window to decide if these kind of practices will continue and really decide what happens in the future.
How do you think that advances in machine learning and the ability to analyze metadata will affect sites like Facebook and the intelligence collection of the NSA?
It's already being done, really, because again, Facebook, Google, that site that you just showed us, they don't want some person to look through this and, sort of like a movie, put a whole bunch of pins and strings and a cork board and go, this person's moving over there, that person's moving over there. Let me go down the list. They want to dump all of this into an algorithm, right, which is just a predefined series of steps that a machine goes through in order to produce what's the desired result or hoped for result. And it's just going to take this, raw data that it has in a standard format and step it through one by one by one by one. And then bam, it's going to throw it up on a map and another map and another map. And then it's going to time shift these things. And it's going to go this IMEI, IMSI pair, or this handset identity, or this Google login, or this Facebook login. We know Facebook, this person normally logs in from this internet address because they use their home Wi-Fi at this time, right, when their phone is charging or whatever, or they're at this college or at this university. But then they logged in at Washington, D.C. They were on a field trip or whatever. And they went back home and they went to this other place. And it can start making inferences about this person's movements over time. And then they can do things like, and the NSA has done this. This was in a top secret program that was revealed, what's called co-traveler tracking, where they go, all right, if this identity moved to this location, what other identities moved at the same time? If your phone gets handed off from a cell phone tower, right, it unpairs with one tower and then it repairs with the next tower. At the same time, somebody else's phone is doing the same thing. And they do that repeatedly over time and distance, right? Not just one cell phone tower, but 5 cell phone towers. You guys are probably riding in the same car or you're on the same bus. You probably know each other, right? And without any human involvement now, without you sharing phone numbers with Facebook, they can start making inferences and go, you guys know each other. Maybe we should suggest you as Facebook friends, right? Maybe in our database, we should start, showing advertisers that these people are part of a cohort or community, even if you've never shared that information at all. Now, if we extrapolate that to practices that are a little bit more sinister than, advertising, and start talking about political targeting. Let's say they're trying to shift your vote, right? We've heard a lot about Facebook advertising and whatnot in politics recently. You know who someone's friends are. You know who someone's family is. You know who they spend the most time with. You know who they're most frequently in contact with. You know what they read. You know what they buy. You know where they live. You know the demographics of that region because it's public from the census. You know the income levels from that. You can look up in public registries, if they live at this location, what is the value of that property? You can make inferences about income. This stuff is going to be used for creditworthiness evaluation, which is already done in a lot of places, particularly like China. When we think about social credit, it's used for the government issuing travel permissions or not. We have, in my opinion, a very short window to decide if these kind of practices will continue and really decide what happens in the future, because this is a redistribution of power away from the individual and away from the collective of society broadly, and to the institution of the business platform providing these services, right, which they're really serving themselves to your private details, or to the governments that order and regulate them. Because if you remember the NSA revelations of 2013, one of the very first ones, the PRISM program, that people recall because of a famous slide that had all the corporate logos on it. Google, Facebook, Apple, Yahoo, Microsoft, all of these guys began voluntarily sharing information with government beyond what the law required. And this is the thing that we have to remember. Corporate power and government power are increasingly interrelated. At the same time that public social power is being intentionally diluted. Our bonds of fraternity to one another are being fractured. We are being made more disagreeable by social media, and we're being introduced to greater levels of division. At the same time, this corporate governmental axis has never been tighter. And we need to think, if we are at a fork in the road, which direction we want to go down. Now, I will say something unusual that I did not expect is I actually see some corporate businesses that have been very active in space and very aggressive in collecting data about users. Apple is a specific example here. Apple has been better than Google. They still collect a huge amount of data that they shouldn't. They protect it to a lower degree than they should because they're afraid of pressure from the FBI and other law enforcement organizations. But they're beginning to reorder their operating system and collect less data. They're not stopping the collection of data, but they're collecting less, and they're trying to limit the amount of information in certain ways to create a competitive distinction relative to the pure ad businesses of the internet, the Googles, the Facebooks, right? And there's another prong of this, I think, which is actually leading Google and Facebook to begin doing less of this, which is they are afraid of regulatory backlash. Right now, they're so chummy with the United States government, they're not afraid of anything at all. But overseas, the relationship is not the same. And as these countries start to run into the rough edges of basically irresistible corporate power that can't be regulated, it can't be taxed, it can't be influenced, it can't be really negotiated or interacted with in any way in the traditional way that governments expect, governments are going to start thinking about what is the equivalent of a corporate death sentence. Now, what the sort of shiny result of this, shiny side of the penny for the average person, is that these practices are going to become less visibly abusive. We are living through the Wild West days today. I don't think the abuse is likely to end anytime soon, but we are seeing the beginning of an opening where people of your generation will be able to see the blood in the water, and I think actually act to sort of police the worst of these sharks.